Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna talk about my orchid supplies. I'm gonna show you what I use with my orchids, what brands and what products I use in their care. And actually this subject was suggested by one of you guys. I did it a long time ago in the balcony days, and at the time that video got quite a lot of views, but in the meantime I moved countries, I'm using other types of products, so I think it is time for an updated video. Before we start though, we're gonna try out something new. I opened the window, which I usually close due to the noise, but I kind of did some rearrangements in the greenhouse and things got pretty echoey. You might have heard it in the last video. And one thing that helps is opening the windows. So we'll see how the video goes noise-wise. Let me know in the comment section if the traffic noises outside bother you. My struggle with echoes are infinite. But with that said, on with the video. So let's start from the bottom up. Let's start with the pots. And well, I have a wide array of pots that I'm using and quite a wide array of places where I obtain them. So the vast of my collection is potted in my older plastic pots. I think I still have pots that are like almost 7 years old or something. Because really clear plastic pots, as long as they don't crumble, they are perfectly fine. If you wash them with some detergent, such as bathroom cleaners, they're perfectly fine to reuse over and over and over again. And that's what I did. I saved all of the pots in which my orchids came in, that's one. And also I bought myself some new pots from eBay, from other nurseries, even from garden centers if I found, and I kept reusing them because they're perfectly fine. Most of the pots are very old pots. You can see by the size of the holes that this was done with a nail back in the balcony days. But as my collection grew, obviously I needed to purchase more, so I have all sorts of pots, such as these ones, which are brand new, just waiting to be used. I ordered them from eBay, these ones. You can find them on Amazon. Depending on your location, really, you can find them maybe at garden centers as well. I don't find any locally for sale, so I do rely on online stores. They're not the cheapest ones, sadly, so for this reason, I do try to obtain some pots. And being that I have a few flower shop friendships here, which from time to time throw away some Phalaenopsis orchids because not all of them are sold, I asked them to save the pots for me because I am more than happy to purchase them. I can purchase them at the same price that I do online, but I don't have to pay transport, right? Luckily, some of these flower shops are really kind, and sometimes they just pile up some pots and they just give me the pots for free. All I need to do is wash them. These are pots that came from the flower shop, and as you can see, I didn't wash them just yet. So if you can establish a friendship with a flower shop or garden center, you can definitely find some pots there as well. And of course, whatever orchid comes into my collection in a transparent pot and outgrows its pot, I am definitely saving the pots and cleaning them. This is not a clean pot, and reusing them with other orchids. And another type of, let's say, improvised pot that I have is a food container, which I can find locally and at a very affordable price. And the advantage with these, except the price, is that you can actually find different sizes for different sized orchids, and you will have to just drill your own drainage and ventilation holes. The problem with these containers is that not all of them are very sun and UV resistant. So with these things, I try to keep them in the grow room more, or if I put them outside, I try to make sure that I do have a decorative container around them. I don't trust that they will last as long. But sometimes there's no other way, and the grocery shop is a really good place to look for some suitable containers and pots. Of course, then comes the sponsorships and the collaborations. These are all rePotme pots. This is what I have left. I have about 20-30 of these pots, which is fantastic because they are already pre-ventilation slits made. Is that even a word? So I don't have to put in the work to create extra ventilation in these pots, and they're actually quite sturdy. Another thing I really like with them is that they're not raised. I need my pots not to be raised necessarily due to how I water them, which I will tell you about. So I like these pots, but obviously these are more expensive and they are sent from the USA. So depending where you are, transport can add up, but definitely they're great and I'm holding on to them for dear life and not damaging them. And with all of these pots, I also like to use decorative pots, which can be ceramic or plastic. These, of course, I find locally at garden centers or flower shops. Some of them are from IKEA. I'll show you one in a second, which are the most affordable ones. But yeah, they're not as cheap as the plastic pots, so many orchids still don't have decorative pots. I'm working on it slowly and surely. Every month I get a few more, because these block out light, so they keep the pots safe from algae. A little algae is okay, a lot of algae is not okay. And in my climate, apparently, they are very, very common. They also provide a more stable place for my orchid, especially the ceramic ones. And also when I water, I don't need to be afraid that I'm gonna ruin the furniture. They take the place of a dish pretty much. So the decorative pots from IKEA are these types. I find that the price for these is the most competitive on the market, and these ones are called Papaya, written like this. And they do have quite a few colors to choose from. They fit a standard 12 or 13 centimeter pot. That will be a 5-inch pot. The problem is they don't have much selection when it comes to sizes. And of course I have all sorts of other types of pots which are not a majority. They just fit different types of orchids, or I just received them. One of them is the Orchid Top pot. I have a few of these. I received a few a long time ago from Orchid Top. You can find them for sale in Europe, you can find them for sale on rePotme as well. They're not very cheap, but they are really pretty and they are very suitable for orchids. The problem is they're incredibly airy, and for my environment it's not the most ideal thing. I actually want to maintain the moisture inside the pot. But for a few orchids and for an environment which might be more humid or cooler, they're pretty neat. I really like them. They just don't suit me all that well. I also have some baskets, and most of my vandas are in baskets. Oh, P.S. You'll have some separate videos down below in the description for all of these products if you want to learn more about something and if I did a separate video on it. So for the baskets, I do have a separate video on. These baskets I received from rePotme. The tiny ones, I don't have any tiny vandas, so I'm not using most of them, but one day I will come across a tiny vanda. Then we have some net pots. These vary usually. Many brands produce them. I have the ones from CZ Gardens, and then all sorts of random containers that I find here and there, and food containers and all sorts of stuff that just fit together and fit the type of orchid I'm growing as well. Finding a suitable pot or container can be quite a creative experience. So I think that's about it in the pots department. Let's talk about the medium. Alrighty, medium. So first of all, how I store it, because this is a new acquisition. I just went last week and got myself a sort of shelved closet made out of plastic. Does that make sense? Maybe not. I used to keep the medium that I would use frequently in these containers that would just sit all around my grow space. I would trip on them because usually they sit on my filming table, but sometimes I need to film something else. So I would put them on the floor and I would step on them and spread them, and just it was a nightmare. So I just went to the home improvement store and looked for something more suiting. And I found this, which is perfect because I can put it under my filming table and I can place whatever type of medium I want inside. There are only 3 compartments. There were other ones which were taller, but I needed something that would fit under my table. I can get another one if I want another one, but mainly I use 3 types of soils or media. Sphagnum moss, bark, and also the soil for the African violets, which I premix. But I'm so happy that I found the solution because medium doesn't just sit on the floor anymore. Let's get into the type of media that I use though. So first off, Sphagnum moss. My favorite and preferred brand is this one. It's Sphagnum moss from Besgrow. You will have it written in the description. From what I gather, most people actually use this brand. It is pure New Zealand sphagnum moss, or it claims to be, and I can tell you that it is a very good quality sphagnum moss. I used chili moss in the past, and I really wasn't as happy as with this one. This is a lot fluffier and it's not degrading fast. I mean, I have orchids which were sitting in sphagnum moss for more than a year, and yeah, on top they accumulated algae, but now I know how to fight them. But inside, the moss was brand new. It was not compacted, it didn't smell funky, it was just perfect. Many stores around the world carry it, none of which are in my area. Anyway, now bark. This is another very hard to find material. Or better said, it's hard to find a quality one. I tried all sorts of brands that I can find locally here because I do need a lot of bark. So ordering it from Amazon or other places, it will take a lot because it weighs a lot, the volume is big. So I try to stay with local stuff, and luckily I found a local store which carries a very good type of bark. But it's not orchid bark. It is actually the Zoomed bark intended for reptiles. Now, typically, I stay away from products which are not intended for orchids because many of them are really not suitable. They contain all sorts of substances which are not okay for orchids. This one doesn't. I know that other reptile-intended bark is not okay. Some of my viewers told me they had bad experiences. I'm not finding any bad experience with this one. It is actually pretty good. It's not like Orchiata, so I don't think it will last that long, but it's holding up really, really well actually. It smells nice. I don't think it has all sorts of bad additives in it, and mixed with the Sphagnum Moss is absolutely great. So this I buy big quantities of, but I'm in luck because I can find it locally at my pet shops. But we'll see about the test of time. So far, this one holds up quite okay as well. And Orchiata I think is like 5 times more expensive, which is okay, it's a good product, but it would cost me a lot to order it. Half of it will be the Orchiata, half of it will be transport, and that just doesn't make sense. And a few of my orchids, maybe 10-15 of them, are repotted in all sorts of rePotme mixes because they did send it to me to try it out. Some of it was used in the sponsored series, the Orchid Care series, some of it not, like the Cymbidium one, which we recently used. You will find some more details in the description about it. They're really nice and I like the multitude of things that are blended in, of course. All of the orchids that I have in these mixes are doing really, really great, but they're not all that affordable. And for a person who doesn't live in the USA, transport can add up. So until they can actually have some distribution in other continents, it's kind of hard to get a hold of these. So they're kind of like the Orchiata, a little bit too expensive to just ship in at the moment. They do have, or actually contain Orchiata, by the way. So most of my 300, I think, or almost 300 orchids are potted in a mixture of bark and Sphagnum Moss. Some orchids do have slightly different ratios depending on what they want. Some of them have more moss, some of them have more bark, but for most of them, even for the terrestrial ones, I do work with a combination of both of these. And that is it. I don't normally use anything else. I used to use some perlite, some leca, but I don't do that anymore. They are fillers meant to aerate the medium. And as I was saying, I don't need aeration in this environment. I need water retention. So a combination of these is enough for everything that I have. Next up, fertilizers. As many of you know, my main and core fertilizer is the MSU. I have been using it for the past 3 years or so, and I'm quite happy with it. Out of all the fertilizers that I used, this is the most long-lasting one. I keep this in the closet, rarely open it, and I work with a smaller quantity in this container, which I close off as well as I can. If I were to open the big tub every time, this product would spoil faster. So I always decant some fertilizer in a smaller container, and that works out great. As far as other additives are concerned, I don't really use them. Let me get the ones that I'm testing or that I'm playing around with. I am not the type that uses additives or extra fertilizers or other things. The MSU has, theoretically at least, everything that orchids need, and I don't see deficiencies that I can attribute to fertilizer. Deficiencies that I have are usually on the recovering orchids, on the orchids which lost their roots. There is a reason why they might be deficient of this or the other, but perfectly healthy orchids have no deficiencies. Therefore, I don't see reasons to add anything to them. I have been testing out the seaweed fertilizer, fish and seaweed fertilizer. I might try out only seaweed as a booster and try it out. I'm not impressed. I don't see a difference. I don't know. It's not for me. But I do have a few around, and if there's ever a breakthrough, if I ever discover something, of course, I'll let you guys know. But for the main part, I don't use anything other than the MSU. Not even homemade stuff. I actually got a question from a viewer recently asking me to make a video about the use of garlic and other things that promote health for orchids, and answered that I don't use anything like that. All I use is water and fertilizer, and that's it. But you know, it's okay if you want to use them. It's okay if you think you see something and it makes a difference for you. I don't think it does for me, so I'm sticking to the basics. Next up, one of the most interesting aspects, the potions that maintain an orchid healthy. These are the ones that I use on a pretty regular basis, except this one, we'll talk about it. So first of all, alcohol. whether it's isopropyl or ethanol. Alcohol disinfects tools, and when you're dealing with orchids, that is something you need to do in between each orchid. You want to cut a root, you want to cut a flower spike or a leaf, you sterilize your cutting tools with alcohol. There are other ways to sterilize cutting tools as well. If you have a different way, that's perfectly fine, but alcohol is something we all have at hand. Being that I have a very big collection, and statistically speaking, I have more pathogens because I have a bigger collection, what I do is I dip my cutting tools in alcohol and then I use a flame. This is not something that I would recommend because you need to be careful, of course, with fire, and alcohol alone, I think it's enough if you don't have a lot of orchids. But if you're a more experienced grower, I'm not going to tell you how to sterilize your tools. Alcohol is also good in keeping mealybugs at bay, or at least in check, because they are very susceptible to alcohol. Another thing that I use, I think just as much as alcohol, is hydrogen peroxide. Now, these 2 bottles have been sent to me by my friend. I don't find these locally. What I find is ethanol and this type of hydrogen peroxide, which is a different concentration. Typically, on most orchids, it is safe to use a 3% solution. See, this one is a 3% concentration. This one can be used straight out of the bottle. 6% can be used as well, but of course it is a little bit stronger, and some orchids are just more sensitive, particularly with their root system. Here locally I find the 6% concentration one in a tiny little bottle, so what I do is I mix it with the same amount of distilled or osmosis water, and what I get is a 3% concentration. Hydrogen peroxide is wonderful. Not only is it a very good fungicide if you have an explosion of molds and other nasty stuff, this will take care of it. It will not solve the cause. It will just take care of the symptoms and of the population, let's call it like that, of mold. But not only that, it is very good against snails and their eggs. Ever since I started to use hydrogen peroxide on orchid roots, every time I repotted a brand new orchid, I did not have any more snail issues. And I struggled with snails for a whole year, trying all sorts, or pretty much all solutions available on the internet. If you can think of a solution, most probably I already tried it with varying degree of success or failure. Hydrogen peroxide is what keeps me safe, and I've been using it ever since. I never repot a new orchid without it. Next up, cinnamon. Now, people claim that cinnamon has all sorts of properties, and this is the ground cinnamon you find in grocery stores. What I use it for is cuts. If I cut a leaf, then I will apply a little bit of powdered cinnamon on that leaf, and statistically speaking again, I seem to have less reinfections when I do this, or any at all, to be fully honest. Whenever I just cut the leaf and let it be, many of the times I do get another reinfection, so I need to cut it again. But when I use cinnamon, this doesn't happen. So it's like a shield, like a barrier. And like cinnamon, I'm sure there are other products which can work the same, but cinnamon is very easy to find. And it works, so I'm not gonna change it. People also suggest that cinnamon is a natural antifungal or antibacterial. I don't know about that, to be fully honest, but I am trying it out. I'm doing here a little concoction of cinnamon and water, which maybe I will tell you about in a video if it works. With this water, if you filter it, you can actually solve powdery mildew, or so they say. Now, my problem is not with that. I have some thrips to work with, and I want to try the solution out because I found some accounts which suggest it works. To be honest, I kind of doubt it, but I want to try it out. So this is something I don't usually use. I'm testing it out, but I'm using cinnamon. Paraffin oil, though, is something I typically use in my anti-spider mite solution, which I will share with you down below. It is the DIY version of the horticultural oil solution based on mineral oil, which in some parts of the world you can find available for sale. And you'll have more details about this in the description, but look at that, look how much I used already. And I still find here and there an outbreak. This year has been pretty crazy when it comes to spider mites and other insects, but I'm on top of it. Alrighty, now for tools and other related stuff. Where to start? I'll start with the most important tool, my pair of pruners, or actually these are Fiskars. Ever since I received them from rePotme, I'm only using these. I love them. They're very light, very easy to use. Whenever I deal with roots, leaves, flower spikes, I use this. But when I need to work with thicker rhizomes or thicker flower spikes, I still use my old rusty one, which is now used in the garden. It is not so easy to use, it is heavier, but it does a much better job if I have to cut very thick stuff. From a local garden center, I purchased some tags, and I have here a marker. I also like to use raffia tape because in time it will degrade, it will break down, or apparently it does. It never happened to me because I never use it in very wet situations. Very rarely I will use some wire ties as well. I do prefer the raffia tape though. I do have multiple scissors. They're not interesting though. This on the other hand is a Polaroid little air pump, and what I do with this, especially for the African violets, but sometimes for the orchids as well, is I remove the water that might have gotten in the crown or a little bit of dirt. It's a great addition to just remove dirt with air. On a regular basis, I do use the bamboo skewers. I use them as stakes. They're not permanent stakes. They do start to degrade pretty fast, but I only keep them until the orchid roots itself. For a more permanent stake, I have to say I really love these ones that rePotme sent me. They are wire, they are wire stakes that have a little hook here. I really like them. Here we have my collection of flower spike clips. I never throw them away. I collect them for years and years because they're very useful and are easily disinfected with some alcohol sprayed on them. Of course, a little broom and a dustpan, always handy. And here's something that I forgot to mention. When I mix in my spider mite solution, I use a little bit of dish soap, and I use this little holder that keeps my greenhouse kitchen rags and the dish soap, and also my bathroom cleaner. Whenever I wash plastic pots, I use that, not the dish detergent, because that is stronger. And lastly, here is my watering can. It is a new one. Recently, my older one broke, and it broke right up top, the nozzle here. So it was impossible for me to replace pieces or parts or fix it in any way. The neck practically cracked and it was not making a tight seal anymore, so I couldn't use the pump anymore. However, I still have the same nozzle that I prepared in my video from 3 years ago, so I'll link it down below to that video. This is how I water pretty much everything in my grow space. I don't put my orchids in the sink unless I want to flush them, but on a regular basis, this is what I use. And these were all of the supplies that I use with my orchids. For the African violets, I have slightly different supplies, but maybe that's a topic for another video if you're interested. But for now, I hope you found this interesting. Maybe it inspired you to use something or to DIY something for yourself. Thank you for suggesting it. And with that said, you know the drill. Like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, African violets, and other fun subjects. And if you wish to support the channel, do consider visiting the merch store down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!